So I will be in conversation with my mother. This is a very professional conversation we're going to be having. I've known my mother for 40 years, quite in depth. I've got to watch her work closely, her interests. I come out of the bedroom in the morning since I was a kid, and I've seen mom and dad sitting in the balcony sharing a single fried egg, talking about politics, art, music, the news. And of course, in 1997, I think I was about 19 at that time, busy reading Archie comics and trash and, 1997, yeah, I was a bad reader. She's like, you were still reading Archies. Our home was full of, Tarkovsky and Russian writers and Kerala writers and amazing inspiration. But in 1997, Mom, you put everything into a magazine called Gallerie. And this was your own expression of so much that was, I think I'd grown up around, but always just eavesdropping on conversations. And the books were around, but to see Mom have her own magazine out there. So why don't you tell us, lots of friends in the audience also, they probably know some of these stories, but what was the big inspiration for bringing out a magazine like Gallerie? If we can even have a physical copy, I can just show it to the audience who hasn't seen Gallerie.
Well, first of all, thank you, Junoon, for having us here. Samira, Ramu, Ramanathan, who are both not present today. The team, which is wonderful. Thank you all for organizing this mad evening with Yuki and me. But I shall try to be as entertaining as possible. Oh, that's tough, but I shall try. Gallerie happened around 97 because, well, at that time I was working with Rafiq and his ad agency, and originally I'm a journalist and a writer, so I took a break and I was working in the creative department of the ad agency, but it just didn't work for me. The ad agency didn't work for me. What they do didn't work for me. So I had to find my own avenue. And one fine day I just woke up and said, I'm not going to the office. This is it. I have to find my own direction. And that's what I did. I conceived Gallerie, and I worked on it, and there was a young design person who was working at our office, Mangesh Rane. So I asked him to help me with producing the first dummy. We did that. We gave it to a printer. The printer said, yes, we shall be there for you, and that's how it started. And it's all that I'm passionate about, which is the visual arts, the literature, which is cinema, photography, poetry, all the disciplines of the arts, theatre, music. So it all came together in Gallerie.
And Mom's magazine comes out twice a year, and we call it a birthing. It's a twice a year birthing, and it's a lot of work that happens. Why don't you tell us how Mom's theme for the magazine can sometimes be a country, and the art and literature and the politics, how is it expressed in the visual arts and all of a country? And it could be Japan, it could be the Philippines, it can be a city. You've done New York as well, right? It can be Palestine. There can be issues as well, or ideas that she's really that kind of obsesses her for the moment. So we will have issues on what are some of the idea-based issues you've had?
Well, the one that you're seeing now is on the Philippines, which is the most recent issue. So I went to the Philippines and I worked on it. I go to each region and spend a good number of days, times, weeks there, and I meet artists, I meet writers and filmmakers, photographers, and an issue emerges out of that. So the Philippines happened, and before that, that's the 44th volume issue, but before that, many more happened. Like, well, this is just to give you an idea, the photo essay section in the Philippines issue. They are a tribe called the Kalingas, the indigenous people. And so we have a photo essay of them. Images are very important in Gallerie. Images that evoke curiosity. So I hope this makes you want to know more about the women of Kalinga. Okay, the next one is, that was Japan. I had done that in, I think, 2007. And then we did Afghanistan and Taiwan. So, you want to ask about Afghanistan?
I know Mom had a lot of adventures and in most of the countries that she's traveled to, and you went to Afghanistan though. This was tougher because you went 3 weeks after the Indian embassy was bombed in Afghanistan, and she still chose to go there and do your research. So tell us.
Yeah. So I travel alone to all of these places, and when I travel alone, I find that excellent because I can focus day and night on what I'm doing. And Afghanistan, when I arrived there, there's a huge story and adventure around it. I went to, it was, just after the Indian embassy was bombed, and people said I was nuts going there. But I went especially because it was a very fragile moment. And I stayed in a place called Turquoise Mountain. And that happened because, interestingly, I met a person from Afghanistan who lives in New York, who's a makeup artist, and he does stuff for Meryl Streep and all the big time Hollywood actors. And he did for Rafiq, he did a fashion shoot, the makeup. And Rafiq asked me, this person is in Bombay, would you like to meet him? I said, no. Makeup artist? No. So then he said, he's from Afghanistan. So I said, yes, I want to meet him. And I met him, and we kind of connected instantly. And I told him that I want to go to Afghanistan, I want to do this, I want to do an issue. I want to tell people that Afghanistan is not all Taliban. He organized Turquoise Mountain, this place for me to stay in. And Rory Stewart, who's a British parliamentarian, he's the one who had founded Turquoise Mountain. It's a space there which is very away, apparently, from dangers. So I'll just show you. I went there, and these were my guards. So the first thing that happened when I arrived at Turquoise Mountain, I was given Rory Stewart's room to stay in. And this was shown to me saying that these are all going to be your guards. And don't you ever go out on the streets alone, ever. So I said, okay. And I was there, and I always had an escort, and I went around and met all kinds of people there, artists and all kinds of people. And then I thought, I want to do something more. So which is what? I said, I want to go out without the guards and without someone walking with me all the time. So I stepped out all by myself, and I walked the streets of Kabul, and people would stare at me because they could see I didn't belong there. And then I would have people stopping me and singing Hindi film songs to me, They would be very happy, and oftentimes I took taxis, and the people in the taxi driver would love to sing Hindi film songs to me. So I felt there was a kind of connect, and I wanted to meet people, like everyday people, and it was wonderful. It was absolutely wonderful. I did not feel scared even once. And so this whole thing of danger, 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 I felt was created. I traveled through the Salang Pass to other cities. Nothing happened. Everything was fine. And I brought out the issue, and I launched it in New York and San Francisco, particularly because the US likes to paint Afghanistan as a dangerous country. And I wanted to tell people, no, it's not that. It's just being created, and terror is being created, but it's not so.
going to see another issue, and we can.
Yeah, so
You had
Palestine.
Palestine, you had Central Asia. Any
Yeah.
story from Palestine?
Well, Palestine, I wanted to do very much an Israel-Palestine issue, like a double issue, because they're always at war and conflict. So I went to the Israeli consulate and I spoke to the consul general and I said, look, I want to do an Israel-Palestine issue. And the consul general, who was a lady, said, oh, that sounds really interesting and all of that. Then her husband, who runs the cultural department, came in and said, what? You want to do Israel and Palestine? No way, we can't do that. So I said, okay. I went back home. A week later, I went to the Israeli consulate, applied for a visa just as a tourist, saying I want to see Bethlehem and all of that. And I went to Jerusalem. I stayed 2 nights in Jerusalem and took a bus to Ramallah, into the Palestine area. And I stayed in Ramallah for 3 weeks. And I had tremendous experiences from there, meeting the different kinds of Palestinian people, observing how they are treated by the Israelis, especially at checkpoints. So I call this checkpoint Palestine because every time I went through a checkpoint, I would experience horror. Horror not towards me. I mean, the Israeli young soldiers were all very arrogant, 17, 18 young boys and girls, extremely arrogant. They would treat the Palestinians like dirt, and they would look at me very disparagingly, knowing, okay, you're an Indian tourist, okay, go ahead, kind of thing. And it was really traumatic, So this is on the ground experience of what the Palestinians are experiencing there from the Israelis.
Yeah. And
Central Asia was another interesting experience. When I went to Tajikistan, towards the end of my stay, these are areas that we don't know enough about, and I'm always very curious to know more about areas that we do not know about, or people say it's dangerous. So in Tajikistan, I did all my scouting and exploring, and towards the end, I met the Indian ambassador and I said, okay, now I will be going off to back to India. I had gone to Kyrgyzstan also, and I was returning. So he said, did you go to the Pamir Highlands? I said, no. He said, how can you come all the way to Tajikistan and not see the Pamir Highlands? It is something very special. So I said, how do I go there? He said, well, there are only 2 flights a week. And I said, I have to go back to Delhi. My flight is booked. He said, okay, I'll send you in a helicopter. So I went in a helicopter to the Pamir Highlands, and he had arranged a hotel for me, stayed there. And 2 days later, I was returning, and the weather was bad, so there was no flights to go back. And my flight to Delhi was waiting. So I panicked. I said, what do I do? And then the hotel manager said, ma'am, I think I'll take you down to the bazaar, and maybe you can get into a vehicle that goes to Dushanbe, and you'll be there on time to catch your flight. I said, okay. So he found a jeep for me, and he said, please sit next to the driver. Do not sit behind. Anyway, I sat next to, you had to pay a little more to sit next to the driver. I sat next to the driver, and there were people behind me, peasants, I couldn't understand a word of what they were saying. And we started driving through the mountains, and then what? In the middle of the night, there's a landslide. So the car had to stop. We couldn't move ahead. And as a woman, you feel, now what? It's dark, you're in the forest, in the mountains, and someone came to the window and said, well, all the ladies come out. And I was really worried. I looked worried, but one of those sweet peasant ladies held my hand and, very firmly, and said, don't worry. And we came out, and we were taken to a farmhouse, and we were made to sit just like this on the floor and given food to eat, and we ate, and then they made beds for us on the floor, and we slept there. So till the landslide could be removed, that was our refuge for the night. And at 5 in the morning, I got up and ran down the mountainside to see if it was all clear. And in an hour, it was all clear. Then we went on to Dushanbe, and I was just on time to catch my flight. So this is what happens when I do Gallerie. It's like one adventure after another.
So, Mom, you talked about the adventures of going to all these places, but I know it's quite an adventure to connect with every artist that you have working with you, every writer, every photographer. You have, in the issues, you've had Amartya Sen, right? You've had Henri Cartier-Bresson's photographs, many great works in the issue. How do you find them? How do you convince them to be part of the magazine, write on a particular issue, give photographs that are good for your theme, the copyrights? How do you do that?
It's a very long process. It needs a lot of time and passion, of course, and interest and patience to step by step go through all of these, compiling all the material, getting the best that you want in your magazine. And I always aspire for the best. I do not want to compromise on that at all. So even if it's a big time writer or a big time photographer, I will pursue and pursue till I get permission to use their work, or till they agree to be part of the issue. And almost every time I'm fortunate, and it happens.
And also, Mom manages to do all of this pretty much solo. So it's a little, what, you describe your office?
Cave.
Do you want to describe your office to everyone?
Well, Ramu called it a cave, and he called me a cave woman, because I'm locked into that space, and I like being quiet most of the time and just working, and I work many hours through the day. So yeah, so I'm a cave woman.
It's one desk, the computer, and Mom's eyes are pretty much stuck on the screen, and we have to go in and say 2 inches at least, open up, look after yourself. We try to get her to take some walks every now and then, but she's pretty much glued to the computer. And it's solo. You also design the magazine. So she edits, you curate the material, you design the magazine as well.
I do the artworks as well. So yeah.
How did that come about? How did you do
to
that?
begin with, Mangesh Rane, who I spoke about earlier, he had set the logo and the design, and after 6 issues he got very busy with his advertising work and he had to move on. So I had no money to employ a design person, so I decided to learn on my own, and I learned it from the office staff, the creative director, how to design quark files, and I experimented and I got it, and since then I've been designing, and every page. I do
every page,
everything.
And it's incredible because this is self-taught. You taught yourself how to design.
Yeah.
And page by page, it's it's international standards. In fact, the magazine gets the printers to win quite a few awards every now and then, right?
Yeah, it's won several awards, but then I have no time to send it for awards. So, I mean, over the last many years, I've not even bothered to send it for these award things. But I think the pleasure really is in the work, in the actual practice of doing it, and to be talking about issues that concern you, If you can go to the next one. Now, this was Auschwitz, which I experienced in Poland. I went to Poland, to 5 cities of Poland, and Auschwitz to me was the most chilling experience I've had in my entire life. Nowhere near, being caught in a landslide or whatever. you just being there and just experiencing. I took all these photos while I was there of all the different barracks, and the images and all that was there. It just leaves you numb. You just become numb, and you try to understand the human psyche. Why do people do this? Why is there hate? Why is there religion that divides people, going for the Jews like this? And why do we perpetuate history? Why does it go on and on? Is there an answer? So I keep asking these questions, that why do we continue doing the wrong that was done in the past? I want young people to think about it, because my generation, I think we ruined the world. I want the younger generation to be have larger minds and think about the world and human beings.
Mom, how for you is art still, does it feels still relevant as a way to talk about things, to, this our ability to try for some change in the world about how we think, how we do, and how can the art still, your magazine is about that. Your art is always, the things that you carry are always about what's happening in the world right now. How do we contest ideas?
For instance, poetry, okay? This issue is entirely poetry and art, art and poetry. And people will say, what is the relevance of poetry? What is the relevance of art that you're talking about? There is no relevance. It's all exotica. It's all La La Land, you can say. But no, it has meaning, and you have to be, you have to have imagination and curiosity to go and seek that meaning. Now this issue, the cover images by Henry Kirsten, who shot his daughter, he's got a whole series with his daughter. It's talking about environment and about the use of plastic, but he's done it aesthetically, but he wants you to think about the use of plastic and the harm it is doing to our world. So after all the turmoil and whatever, I keep talking about all these difficult issues in the world, and one day Rafiq tells me, this was some time back, that why are you always talking about gloom and doom? So I said, okay, let me do a fun issue, and I did one on rain, and I got artists to make works, 42 artists to make works on rain, and we had a show at Sakshi Art Gallery. But again, I went back to issues, for instance, migration. Migration is an issue that is relevant to the whole world, and it's relevant at all times, not just current times. And so this issue has is a discourse on migration and all the problems that are attached to it.
Shall I read a poem from the Philippines issue? This is your Philippines issue. Would you like to hear one of the poems from here? Yeah, just in between?
Okay.
Good for you all? On the Streets by Maxine Sijuko. On the streets, 1,000 different people gather like cattle, circling and blotting out the day. The sun burns bright but illuminates only the shadows of cattle mercifully standing in the way. The sky bleeds embers of crimson, and these cattle march forward with nothing left to say. They turn and turn and turn again with lullabies blanketed in yesterday. Today, 1,000 other people will gather like cattle on 1,000 other blotted streets, herded and collected in an abattoir of pistols, marching aimlessly to the drumbeat of their own defeat. In the corner, a woman withers away, like a dusty rose pining for her own bouquet. But she turns and turns and turns again, with lullabies blanketed in old hearsay. Tomorrow, 1,000 more people will gather like cattle on 1,000 more blotted streets, polluting the violent voices of mute tongues tangled in the twisted tango of sleep. The sky will rain embers of crimson, and we cattle flood tears of deafened sheep. Never mind our voices, our daydreams, our wishes. We are all playthings blanketed in our own deceit.
This is Maxine Sihiko, who's an artist and a poet whom I met in Manila, and her work is excellent. In fact, the cover work is hers. This is her work. So yes. So then I went back to socio-political issues, and Resist is all about issues that concern us in the world. And that you all know is Ai Weiwei, the artist, Chinese artist who's in exile. And here he is, he's done a performance work mirroring what the little Syrian child experienced, which has become an iconic image for the whole world and for what happens with refugees and migrants. Then we have Guernica. Why am I showing Guernica? I'm showing Guernica because Picasso's, this was an issue that was commissioned to me by the French consulate, and they wanted me to do an entire issue on Picasso because we were having a retrospective in India for the first time. And I said, I cannot do an entire issue on Picasso, but I will do India-France relations, and that's what I did. But Guernica is again an iconic image which I wanted to show because of what it represents. And so from all that war and pain and how humans suffer and where they go, through all that concerned me in my lifetime, two books of my poems emerged. And Fuse was taught at Towson University in the US, and When Seeing is Believing is a book of poetry responding to art. And this book is especially, all the sales proceeds of this book are going to a trust called the Missing Trust, and that Leena Kejriwal, who is here, she initiated the trust, and she works with young girls who are rescued from trafficking, and the trust educates these children, young women. Sangeeta Kathiwad, who is also here, helped support the book. She's the one who paid for the production, otherwise it wouldn't have happened. So the two conspirators are here. I'm the third. We're the three witches of Macbeth. So yeah, we got together and this book happened. So every book sold, the money goes to the trust. And yeah, so this is one poem from the book, responding to a work of Amy Vitale, which maybe Yuki, you want?
I can't.
I have it here.
Okay.
So you can perhaps read this. This is happening now. It's been happening for 30 years in Kashmir. It breaks your heart to think.
The house she never visits.
That's the poem.
The house she never visits is in her heart, locked through 30 years when they came to claim the land that once was Jannat, paradise. They came and colonized with the arrogance of guns, built barracks of fear, erased the sun, nailed the youth, invaded bodies of girls and women whose fragile lives are since locked in that sunless house within their hearts. Her eyes are dry, her tears are ice. The house she never visits is within her heart, a tomb of mute rage.
So this was my response to what is happening in Kashmir. And this one is an old classic painting which I responded to, it basically talking about womanhood and what women experience. Maybe you can read that.
There she is framed by a window, tidy hair and uncombed mind, tranquil eyes and unquiet thoughts that ran amok beyond the view of a life, stacked in neat years of rituals. daughter, spouse, mother, grandmother, robot, orphan of circumstances. The window is her anchor. She stands there framed by a prayer that will one day set her free.
Yeah, and well, it has many poems, but I just selected 3 out of them. This is the last one.
Hans, you read this one. You read it.
This one is something that ends on a positive note. So this one is a tribute to Belgian artist René Magritte. You all recognize his work, and I'm ending with this poem because it's positive. It talks of dreams and hope, which we seem to be not having now. Castle in the air for René Magritte. Waves roll unfettered, clouds sail in a dream through washed skies. Somewhere within this calm, a castle floats into the air. The wind stops whistling like a halfway poem. So perhaps when the wind stops whistling, young souls like our Greta Thunberg, the young crusader who works on environment, wake up and wake up the world, and maybe more of you will think about these issues and talk to the young people in your lives and think and get them to work on a better world. I don't know, it all sounds utopian, but I am a hopeless dreamer.
Good time to open it up to the audience.
Have
Yes.
you been able to visit North Korea?
Not yet, no.
Like, have you applied, have you tried, or
Sorry?
not thought about it?
No, I think about all of these regions, but there's that much one can do. I do 2 issues a year, and I've done 44 issues so far, and so I have to go step by step, and there are so many things emerge.
But it would be a
it's not
fascinating
easy.
place to
It's-
research.
Yeah, it would be a tough place to research.
And also, how did you think about the name Gallerie?
Gallerie just came out of the blue, and for me it was, I know the spelling is alright, but for me it was a gallery to view the world from,
All right, thank you.
So that's how it happened. Yeah.
Clearly, you sell this magazine all over the world. How
Yes.
do you actually do it? You clearly sell this magazine all over the world. How do you actually manage that sitting alone in a cave?
Well, when I was
It's a
much younger, 22 years ago, I used to personally go to the museums and university libraries, especially in the US, and just talk to people there, and they would see what I've done when I had the first issue, and they would immediately want to subscribe. And yeah, it was wonderful because it was a one-to-one thing, and people started subscribing. Then people got to know about it, and more people, and universities, a lot of universities started subscribing for the libraries.
But Mum did
young
do that.
people.
Whenever we go on holiday, there's one suitcase full of Gallerie that we carry. And Mum goes and she meets them. And she just knocks on the door and says, "Hi, I'm Bina Sarkar. I'm from Bombay, India, and I have a magazine." Yeah.
Yeah, so I used to literally, it was a one-on-one thing, just go and this is what I do.
When do you decide what's my next issue? Is it before you finish the one you're working on, or it's like, you finish it, then you think of the next?
There's no pattern, an idea emerges in the head just like that. While I'm working on one issue, it may come after I'm done with the issue, but everything is fairly organic, in the sense that there's no grand plan. And I'm not a commercial person. So I do not understand marketing, I don't understand money, I don't understand business. So I just follow my passion, and I do what, it's a compulsion. I do what I think I have to do.
I have a question. First, I'd like to congratulate you for keeping with the print medium
and not gone digital. It's
Thank you.
nothing as great as feeling paper and seeing art, poetry in print.
Yeah.
So I'd like to congratulate
Thank
you on that.
Yeah, I feel the same way. You know, the tactile feel of holding something is very special. Therefore, I cannot read from a Kindle.
It's a very personal thing. You
Yeah.
have a relationship with the content of what you're reading,
Right.
rather than this coming on a screen.
Yes.
I mean, it's just so impersonal.
True.
We've talked about it over many years, you know, should we have an online version? Should we try? Should we make the move? And Mum's always said, no, I need to touch it. I need to turn the page.
But we do have an iPad version.
Oh, we do?
We
Oh.
do have the last 2-3 years we've had an iPad version because a lot of people asked for it, you know, who maybe 44 volumes in a house takes too much space.
And yet there are people who have...
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
Yes.
That's the vocabulary they understand. But it's become a collectible over the years, and people have, you know, they treasure every copy, and they travel. I know ambassadors who've changed countries, but they've taken all the books with them. Yeah. Yeah, actually, Sriram, who founded Crossword Books, he said it's not a magazine, it's a bookazine. You should call it a bookazine. Yeah.
Yeah.
So some of the places that you've already been to, like they're disturbing places. So then once you are back, how do you recoup yourself emotionally? Like how do you bounce back?
It's not easy to bounce back because everything lingers in your mind. It takes a while to assimilate it all and then quietly, which is why I like to be quiet and I like to be in my cave, because then I can do it quietly and the way I want it to move, you know. So that's what happens.
Is that the reason why you take 6 months for one magazine?
Yes, and I do not want to make it into a quarterly because I cannot keep with that pace. I feel the quality will suffer, you know, if I make it a quarterly.
Thank you.
Have you always finished it on time, you know, before the deadline, or you know, it's been sometimes like
That's
half
a
the
good
magazine is like, you know,
question.
still not done.
That's a good question. That's a very good question because yeah, it's tough. It's really tough. I'm you know, I have this OCD thing, and I want everything to be perfect, you know. But it's not always, you know. I'm always dependent on funding. So if some money comes in, then I can do this. If some advertising comes in, I can do that. Sometimes it takes time to come in, and then the issue gets a little postponed. Sometimes contributors take time to send in material, and therefore it, you know, gets a little postponed. But maximum by a month. Maximum late by a month. Yeah.
It's really like what we call independent art in that sense, where you know you're bound by your own interest, your own deadlines as you try, and it's really a lot of friends and family and a lot out here also.
You're your own boss.
On your own, you're your own boss, which is great, and then people towards the end coming in to make sure that Mum's magazine, you know, is going to come out. We have. It's a very stressful time. It takes a toll on Mum's health and all of that, but she goes for it.
Rafiq is a big, strong supporter.
Yeah.
He's the Rock of Gibraltar. He's
Yeah.
always there, and you know he's done many.
Monsieur.
He's done many of the travel stories. He's done many of the travel stories, and with his beautiful photography and his travel writing is excellent. He's contributed in many issues with his stories.
You know, almost all your issues have outstanding poets and writers, and they have a particular direction in which the thought process goes, and of course they are distinctive for their regions. How do you actually identify them and decide what it is you want from a particular country? Because it's as vast as the sky and the cosmos when you go there.
Exactly. So, which is why I need the 6 months, and which is why also. But what happens is I feel like I'm Alice in Wonderland. You know, I just walk in through a door and another door opens, and I walk in through that and another door opens, and in this beautiful way I meet all kinds of people, and they lead me to other people. And I discover the most astonishing, amazing people in the world, you know, through this manner. That's how it all happens. And then I select what I want and compile the issue.
Is there any place that you deeply desire to go to, and why, which you haven't been to yet?
Oh, too many. South America, of course, many regions in South America, some regions in Africa. I want to go to Portugal, then Armenia. There are lots of regions, lots.
Sometimes we
This
discuss
world
it, like,
is-
how about this place, so that we can all travel to it. We can all visit.
Yeah. So when Yuki was performing in Zimbabwe, I went with her to Zimbabwe, and I thought I could do an issue on Zimbabwe, but we had very little time. And there was one man there who was an Indian businessman who was very fascinated by Gallerie, and he said, "You do Zimbabwe, I will fund the entire issue." And then, but it didn't happen because the economy went down, and he said, "I'm sorry, it's not possible." So these things also happen. You know, you get excited, you work towards an idea, and then it doesn't happen.
When you say very little time, what is a good time frame for you to do a magazine, bookazine?
Yeah, it's about 4 months, 3-4 months. You know, you need that time if you want to do it if you want it to be a biannual. So every 6 months, right? So I need 3 months to work on it, and then it goes to press, and that takes a long time. That whole process of
No, I
proofreading.
mean spending time in a particular country.
In a region, 3 to 4 weeks, sometimes 2 weeks. Yeah.
So Zimbabwe, you didn't have 2 weeks.
No, we had about
1 week.
1 week. Yeah, there was very little time.
But
yeah.
isn't 2 week also short? Wouldn't
It
you
is,
want-
but what happens in 2 weeks is it is short. I've stayed much longer in places, but sometimes the funding does not allow one to stay longer than 2 weeks. So I stay 2 weeks, and I just zero in on all the things I want, and then I come back and I continue the dialogue with people, you know. That's how it works.
So over 44 issues with so many interesting contributors and from all spheres, clearly you have managed to stay somewhat in touch with them. How do you actually manage that? How do you keep in touch with people who were there in the first issue and the second issue?
Amazingly, there are from each region. It's not everyone one stays in touch with, but from each region there are at least 2 or 3 people who have remained in touch and have remained friends over these many years. So today I have friends all over the world, you know, and wonderful, warm friends who I can talk to any time, and lovely relationships.
Many of them subscribe to the magazine, and they've
Yeah.
sent emails back to mom or their testimonial. So Amartya Sen says, a magnificent production as well as an especially forceful presentation. And Salima Hashmi, who's also been in the magazine, right, several
Yeah,
times from
she's in-
Pakistan, she wrote, she's an artist and educator, and she wrote, thought-provoking in content and elegant in design, Gallerie has been a comfort and a sane friend in chaotic times. And Adrian Piper, who's also an artist from Germany, says,
and a philosopher.
and a philosopher, he says, I didn't see how Gallerie could possibly be better than its first issue, but each successive one proves me wrong.
Yeah.
So,
So these wonderful people have stayed in touch, and it's heartwarming.
You should
and
read.
Sorry.
You should read the poem on the room in your cave. Because that that also talks about all the people who passed through that room, you know, and maybe.
The poem is in the book. I
Okay.
don't have it on my phone. Yeah, and I'm now at that stage where I cannot recite like my daughter.
By heart.
Like, she's an actor, she can just recite, she knows all her
I
lines.
should know your poems by heart.
Yeah, if I was in school today, I'd be punished and put in the corner. So yeah, that I mean, nobody wants to go and get the book, so forget it. Thanks for suggesting it. Thanks for suggesting it, though.
Probably online and you can access it.
No, the red one, Fuse, the small red book. Yeah. So, so, you know, both gallery and poetry overlap, you know, so when I'm tired working, I sit down and my head goes blank, and then maybe a few words come into it, and then a poem appears, you know. So this is how I work, and this is why I like my cave.
Mom, how old were you when you started Gallerie?
I was very young, a ripe young age of 48.
48, she started, yeah.
I was rather late. I started at 48. I'm 70 now.
And then when did you publish your first book of poems?
Well, I wrote poetry all my life from the
But
time
we
I was
never
10
knew
years
about
old.
this. We
Nobody
didn't know.
knew.
This was all
Nobody
quiet.
knew I write poetry, and I was a closet poet all my life, and it was just a poet friend who discovered I write poetry, and he came out with a chapbook, and then friends all over said, why aren't you coming out with a book? And then as late as 2016, I came out with this book. And this is where that poem resides, which Rafiq wants me to read. It's called The Room, and it's all about the room where I am. The room. This room speaks many languages. Sorry. This room speaks many tongues. Its vocabulary, borrowed from forays to other lands, reverberate within its stark white walls. A canvas for narratives that punctuate the silence with their telling. Books lean with easy comfort on each other, like ancient friends. A bamboo wind chime sings to the banyan tree. Outside and inside is the sea and sky, water and cloud, locked in desire. A paper woman with startled eyes is silent witness to the day's alchemy. The room hums with melodies of itinerant travelers who have traversed its Burma teak floor like it were another continent, suspended in an uncommon stratosphere, seductive, beguiling, edge of flame. Thank you. So this is my room. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think you'll have had enough of me and Yuki, and I think it's time.
It's a wrap.
Yes, yes.
Thank you very much, Edgar and Junoon Team.
Thank you all
Malika.
for being
Thank
here
you.
and being patient listeners with lovely smiles on your faces. Thank you.